So to import an image into Toon Boom Harmony, we're going to go up to File, Import, Images, and we're going to click Browse and navigate to where our background file is. I'm going to select the PSD version and press Open. Now you'll notice here we have two options. So for this mostly applies to when we're selecting multiple files. Since we're only selecting one file, we're just going to say create single layer and we're going to call it BG for background. For the import options, I select import as Toon Boom bitmap drawing because it allows me to draw on the bitmap layer and also to modify it a bit more rather than keeping as original bitmap. You could also convert it to a Toon Boom vector drawing, but I kind of like the bitmap look, so I'm going to select that. For the alignment, I'm going to select actual size because I want to import it at the actual size. I could also do horizontal or vertical fit and it'll resize it to my stage, but we'll just select actual size for now. For the transparency, I usually select straight almost all the time. So I'll select that, press OK, and then we get a pop-up, which lets us know that the file we're importing has multiple layers, and it's asking us how we want to import this file. So we want to create separated layers, and for the transparency, once again, I'm going to select straight. Press OK, and now we have our background imported, but you'll see we need to make a few adjustments to it first before it'll fit. So one quick way to do that is to put a peg on all of my background elements. So I'm going to select the bottom background element, add a peg using my add peg button. Then I'm going to select the next background element, scroll up, and then shift select the top background element. And then I'll drag all those underneath my background peg, which you can see this blue line indicating I'm doing so. So now, let's rename this. Just call it my background peg. So now I can add a keyframe here and then take my transform tool and resize my background according to my stage. There's also some elements I want to change, like for example this treasure chest could be a little bit bigger, so we'll go ahead and resize that up. And these hearts could also be a little bit smaller and in a different place. So I'm going to take all of my UI elements and I'll set a peg for those. So using the same technique, I can now move all of these elements all at one time. So I'll just shrink those down. We'll move the hearts in place, and then we'll take our level and we'll move it over here. So now we can hide our storyboard version of our background. So we'll go up to background storyboard, which I have here, and I'll turn the eyeball off on that. And same with these hearts. We don't need the storyboard version of those hearts, so that's turned off. And we don't need this burst effect quite yet. That's something we're going to animate later. So we'll take all three of those and just move them off the stage, just for now. But now you'll see when I play my animation, my background disappears. Well, if you noticed, you probably saw it already, but our exposure only lasts for one frame. So the easiest way to extend the exposure of all of these frames is to minimize my peg for my background, navigate to the last frame of my animation, click the last frame, and then press F5. And that'll extend the exposure for everything inside the peg. Pretty cool. I like using pegs as sort of a grouping element, keeping things organized and together in one spot. I'll also move it above the color card just because I like having the color card at the bottom. And you can see he doesn't quite match up with his treasure chest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over, but I want it to be a global change. So I'm going to turn off my animate button by clicking this over here. And then I'm going to click on my treasure with the transform tool. And I'm just going to move it over to the side so it matches up with my character a bit better. I also noticed on this spot, one of the spikes is smaller than it needs to be. So we need to actually edit this spike so that it matches up with our character. So this is the reason I like using Toon Boom bitmap drawings, because now I can edit this spike using my Toon Boom tools. So I'm going to go up to my black arrow tool, select cutter, because I only want to select this spike right here. And I'm working on my spike layer right now, which you can see is selected down here. And I'm going to take this spike and resize it up and just move it into a position where it needs to be. And that actually modifies the image itself. So it's a good way to edit images without having to move back and forth from your drawing program back into Toon Boom Harmony. Another element I wanted to animate is his hearts. So as soon as he lands on the spike, the idea is his heart should go down. So I'm going to have his heart animate a little bit and then drop down to half a heart, indicating that he's almost lost all of his lives. So here we want this heart to be the same as this black heart over here. So I'm going to create a blank frame by clicking my blank frame button, and that'll create a new drawing on this frame, but erase the artwork. So then I can take the artwork from heart 3, just copy that, and if I select my heart number 2 and turn my onion skin on, I'll see a ghost image of my previous frame. So I can paste the black heart and then just move it in place where it needs to be, like so. And I need to do the same to this heart. This heart now has half a heart. So I'm going to select heart 1, insert a blank frame with my onion skin on, and I'm going to select this half heart here and copy the artwork from there and paste it into heart number 1. And just move that into place. So the way I want to animate these is they're going to expand when he gets hit and then shrink back down to normal size as time goes on. So I'm going to set keyframes on both heart 2 and heart 1, and then I'll set keyframes further down, say around 200 or so. And that'll give me a layer motion like so. So before I animate these, I need to make sure that my animate button is turned on. Very important. So now I can resize these. And for the easing, I'm going to select both of these keyframes, and I'm going to set the easing to this very dramatic S curve right here. So that way they'll be slow on the ends and fast in the middle. And I also want to offset these so they don't happen at the same time like this. So I'm going to have heart number 1 be delayed by 1 frame by selecting the first frame, holding shift, selecting the second keyframe, and then moving it down 1 frame. So you'll see when I scroll past, they're still in their enlarged position. And the reason that's happening is because I don't have a keyframe set here at the beginning. So if you don't have keyframes set at the beginning for these layers, then it's going to just act like the first keyframe that you make is how it should be throughout the beginning of the animation. So in order to correct this, I'm going to set keyframes on these spots by selecting all of the first frame on these layers, pressing keyframe. And I don't want layer motion here, so I'm going to select each one of these keyframes and press my stop motion keyframe button. But you'll see they're still big. Well, to reset them back to their default positions, I simply press the hotkey of R, and it will reset back to its original position. So that's super useful. Now they're back to their original size, and then when he lands on the spike, boom, he loses his hearts. Now this is where the burst graphic comes into play. Because I want his falling on a spike to look like a video game, I'm going to use the burst in the back of him to make it look like he's taking damage. So there's a few different ways I could do this, and I'll just do it the simplest way I can think of. I'm going to go to the first spot where he first gets hit by the spikes, select burst 1, move it into place using my black arrow tool, and I'm going to set a keyframe right here. And I don't need these previous frames, so I'm going to shift select all of those frames and press delete. So now burst 1 shows up right there. I'm not sure if I'll have it last for 2 frames or 1 frame, but we'll try putting it on 2s for now. So now burst 2 lasts for 2 frames, and then we do the same thing on all of our other burst layers. And because we have this burst effect, I don't know if we need this secondary effect that's going on in this frame by frame animation. So I'm going to go onto my cat layer, turn on my lightbox so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to select all these extra doodads and just get rid of them. So now, when he lands on the spikes, it looks like this. And our whole animation all put together looks like this. And we can pretty much call this shot all done. Next we'll move on to importing and manipulating sound in Toon Boom Harmony.